Ah, yes, we have finally managed to dominate the market for furniture. Ikea controls the destiny of all furniture in the world. Wait a minute, how is China still beating me, and by that much, of the world's most efficient furniture factories? Oh, yeah, they have millions of people on subsistence farms. And those subsistence farms can conjure furniture out of thin air at no cost, while my factories have to buy the wood needed to make the furniture. This is going to be a challenge. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Counterfactual Gaming, the show where if there's something historical in a video game, we don't do it. Now, before we get started, I'd like to encourage you to drop a like or a subscribe on the video if you're enjoying the content that you see. And if there's something counterfactual you want to see me do in a video game, drop a comment down below and let me know what it is. Or if you want to know more about the historical things that I'm doing, drop a comment down below and I'll try and give you more information and answer those comments as best I can. For today, we're going to be playing Sweden, and we're going to try to dominate the world market of furniture and luxury furniture. Or, as I like to call it, the Ikea Gambit. Just a brief overview on how this video is going to go. Like my other videos, I'm going to have a brief discussion of the actual history behind Sweden's agriculture and economy before getting into the gameplay that I do in Victoria 3 that is counterfactual to that history. I always think that knowing the history behind something makes the counterfactual stuff we do in video games a tad more fun. And I also want to remind folks that these builds are not always meta builds, but they do illustrate either odd stuff in game mechanics or strategies that you can pursue to do fun things in the game. Now, why is what I'm proposing today counterfactual? Well, it involves a couple of different things. First of all, because of the labor demands for making Sweden the dominant force in furniture, we're going to have to destroy Swedish agriculture. And what I didn't know about Sweden's economy historically, until I did some reading up on it, was that Sweden in the beginning and middle of the 19th century actually heavily invested in its agriculture. Prior to the time period covered by the game Victoria 3, Sweden was for a long period of time was a net importer of things like grain. Now, this isn't because Sweden didn't have arable land that could be farmed. Quite the contrary, some parts of Sweden actually has some really nice land. But there's a lot of other economic activity that could take place in Sweden that would be more profitable to engage in than just going out and, planting some rye and making grain that way. But there were economic activities that were more profitable than making huge quantities of grain. Also, there were a number of economic disruptions, not just to Sweden's economy, but to Europe's economy in general, during the Napoleonic Wars. But by the time we get to the period covered by Victoria, agricultural improvements had meant that Sweden developed a really robust farming industry, to the point where instead of being a net importer of grain like she was at the beginning of the 19th century, she became a net exporter of grain. But the Swedish economy gets even more interesting than that. I mentioned very briefly in my video about the French wine blight that when the wine blight hit France, some of those vineyards got turned into places that manufactured cheese and butter. Well, during the 1860s and after that, Sweden became heavily invested in dairy products as well. So during the 19th century, Sweden becomes economically invested in both grain production and in livestock, which makes sense because the two feed off of one another. But today, we're not going to do any of that. We're going to, in fact, completely destroy Swedish agriculture of the 19th century in favor of doing something different. In this case, dominance of the furniture market. Now, I want to caution some folks. I had some folks in previous videos ask me if some of my strategies that I'm showing you are 100% meta or optimal? And the answer is no. These are fun, entertaining ways of playing the game, not necessarily optimum, as I will show you when we get to the point where Ikea is having to export tons of furniture just to keep the factories profitable. But what I am going to show you is that it is possible in Victoria 3 to hyper-specialize small economies like Sweden's in order to create favorable economic conditions for economic growth. Big economies in Victoria 3 cannot afford to specialize. You need a broad base of all different kinds of resources, and you need to produce basically all industrial goods on your own for two reasons. One, you can make money doing it, but two, you cannot count on other countries to export large quantities of those goods to you. But small economies like Sweden can really focus. The problem, of course, is Sweden doesn't have infinite labor. And since Sweden doesn't have infinite labor, we're going to have to get workers for those furniture factories from somewhere, and they're going to come from Sweden's farms. For this video, I do want to at first show you how I get Sweden started. Now, since Sweden is a small country, I'm going to eventually become Scandinavia, of course, but we start out as a small country with a small economy. Like, the first little baby steps in the game are really important. And so what we see here is I'm doing a classical opening where I build a couple of construction sectors. I make sure that I've set my construction sectors to iron frame buildings. But even though my goal is to dominate furniture markets, you'll notice that there's no furniture factories in my queue right now. Well, that's because in order to actually be able to build Sweden's economy, I have to have construction sectors. And in order to fuel my construction sectors, I've got to have logging camps and iron mines. And in order to utilize those logging camps and iron mines properly, I have to have enough infrastructure. And Sweden does not start with railroads, nor does Sweden have the requisite industry to support railroads. So, for the first part of the game, I'm not even looking at furniture. Yes, I'm going to dominate the world with furniture eventually, but I've got to get the basics in place. To make this clear, because my construction sectors, as the tooltip will tell us, require tools, fabric, wood, and iron, I need to expand my production of those goods so that I can expand the production of construction sectors. Now, here's the part that might be a little confusing to some players. Yes, as I expand construction sectors, my logging camps and iron mines will become more profitable, hire more people, all that sort of stuff. But at this point in the game, I don't have enough autonomous investment or private investment to completely offset my construction costs, which is fine. That's the early game for you. But I don't want anyone to think that I'm creating an infinite loop of economic expansion here. Yes, those logging camps and iron mines will be profitable. Yes, they will be paying dividends that can be used for investment. But it still costs me money to run the construction sectors, especially this early in the game. But I want to bring the price of wood and iron down, along with the price for fabric and tools, once I build some of them, in order to make it cheaper to run my construction sectors. If I can cut the cost of iron and wood down, then I can build an extra construction sector and speed up construction. I am also utilizing grass is greener on my capital. I want excess labor to go to the capital, and I've set my taxes up in this way. You'll notice I have some consumption taxes in place, but I've kept taxes in the middle. Now, I'm playing this on the beta patch, and I want everyone to understand that the old tax and spend method still kind of works from before the beta patch, but turmoil really slows down construction speed. I don't want any turmoil in Sweden. And if you jack your taxes up too high for too long, you end up with a bunch of states that are really unhappy, and it slows down your construction, even if you can technically afford to pay for more construction. I don't want that to happen. Also, the difference, we look at the tooltip, the difference between middle taxes and super high taxes is a whopping $9,000. Like, why would I want to pay for all the extra radicals by just getting another $9,000 in taxes? It's silly. So we might raise taxes later, but to be clear, we're not doing that now. You won't see it right now, but I am going to utilize more tool workshops once I have enough wood and iron in place. And why would I, why do I want more wood and iron for tool workshops? Well, the reason is because I'm still using wrought iron tools. I will eventually transition to steel tools, but we're not there yet. And since I can make tools from just wood and iron, I can expand wood and iron production to make it easier to make the tools I need to run the construction sectors, and you see how that works. But if we're paying attention, experienced players will also know that using advanced production methods on my furniture factories will require tools. So of course I'm going to have to expand my tool industry to do that as well. If we move the clock to 1844, you can see that I've been busy. I've got some furniture industries in place. We are expanding those furniture industries as well. But I wanted to take a look at something I'm doing with diplomacy. I'm starting to bankroll Denmark. Now, why in the heck am I bankrolling Denmark? I want to form Scandinavia. I need to form Scandinavia. I need the labor, but I also need the wood, the iron. I could try to do this by warfare, but I know that some of you out there would actually prefer to do this by warfare, but I'm going to do this diplomatically, partially because this is not a game of warfare, but I just want to do some economic stuff, but also to demonstrate that it is possible. We will peacefully unite Scandinavia, despite the fact that Denmark starts in 1836 as a rival to Sweden. You have to put some effort into it, but you can make Denmark a peaceful part of a Scandinavian union. You can also tell that I've been raising taxes a little bit, although now I have more income from taxes than I would previously, and I'm trying to pay for the subsidies I'm paying to Denmark, as well as I kind of overbuilt construction sectors a little bit, so I'm trying to keep those construction sectors running at full blast. Also, if you look at my queue here, you can see that I'm going to build some government buildings after I get the food industries built in order to make my taxes better. Because if we look at my tooltips, yeah, you see that I'm not really collecting the taxes that I should. The irony is that with such a small economy like this, unrealized taxes of 7,000 pounds are that's actually a lot of money. It really is. Why am I building a food industry if I'm trying to dominate the world? Well, furniture is great, but I do need a way to feed people. And if I'm going to destroy Swedish agriculture to move all the labor into furniture factories, I do need a way to make food and liquor to support my population's standard of living. I could import liquor, but sometimes it's hard to import liquor. But there's nothing wrong with importing grain and then processing it through my food industries in order to make the requisite groceries and liquor that my pops will actually use. Also, once I unify with Denmark, Denmark has tiny little colonies overseas, and I can put enough sugar into cultivation in those colonies to support a food industry. In other words, I'm going to destroy Scandinavian agriculture to feed the labor into my furniture factories, but some of that labor is going to go into food industries and make me some additional money that way while providing groceries that people want to buy. We're going to feed everyone, we're just not going to do it with Scandinavian grain. By the time we get to 1845, you can most definitely see that furniture manufactories are almost leading the way in economic terms. Now, the iron mines and the logging camps are slightly ahead of them in terms of contributions to the investment pool. There's a reason for that, and it has to do with how prices are kind of out of whack. I do need to expand logging and iron mines a little bit. But even though I'm not quite dominating the market of furniture just yet, we are making solid money from these furniture manufacturers, and they are helping to fund additional economic growth. Which leads to us doing something in 1850, which is absolutely amazing for a small economy like Sweden. I've added another construction sector to the queue. One lousy construction sector. Yeah, I know. When you're playing Russia or Germany or France, you're like, who cares? You added a construction sector. But for Sweden, I only have 5 construction sectors. Adding another one is basically a 20% increase in my construction output. Now, you're also going to notice that I've been building steel mills. Steel has nothing to do with furniture. I don't need steel for furniture at all. What do I need steel for? Well, I need steel for these guys, my tooling workshops. They're already profitable, but I need to have more steel to bring down that price of steel so that I can expand these tool workshops. Because, of course, who's consuming all the tools? Oh, that's right, it's the furniture manufacturers. And tool prices are starting to get out of control. I've gone past having iron and wood for tools. We're now using steel because it's more efficient, and it's also going to be more profitable all the way around. We are now the number 2 producer of luxury furniture in the world. It's 1861. France is still pulling away from me just a little bit, but I will catch up to them soon. Now, if you've been paying attention to GDP, you'll notice my GDP has been cranking up. I haven't unified Scandinavia yet, but I'm now number 12. My GDP, with an exception at one point, has been kind of going up the whole time. This is good. This is the kind of economic growth I want to see. But you can already see that I'm facing profitability problems in my furniture factories. We're not at a crisis yet, but you can tell that the price of hardwood is getting out of control. Why is the price of hardwood getting out of control? Well, here's my problem. I'm not using enough regular wood, but I desperately need the hardwood for my furniture factory. So while I can further expand logging camps, I've got a problem where if I expand them too much further, we end up in a situation where the logging camps are struggling because they're overproducing regular wood, even though I need the hardwood for the furniture factory. So my plan here is we take a look at the queue. Ooh, 39 construction points.
Oh my lord.
So many construction points. It's like an amazing number of construction points with a tiny economy like this. Is to finish off another round of furniture stuff, build more iron and logging camps, and then see where the economy goes from there. And hopefully, in the next year or so, I'll unify Scandinavia, reorganize Scandinavia's economy, and figure out where to go from there. In fact, in order to beat China with furniture factories, I'm going to have to go all the way to 1879. Since it's not that exciting to watch me press the buttons to increase furniture and tool manufactories and expand them up, I'm going to put that into a montage and put it to some music. It is at this point in the montage that a desperate counterfactual realized that there was no possible way to support his economy any further without adopting a free trade policy, because he was running out of convoys and literally doesn't have enough ports to do it. Also, free trade is the only way that Counterfactual can afford to actually continue expanding his furniture industry. To those who were enjoying the montage and are sad that it was interrupted, Counterfactual would like to apologize, but he felt it was important that you know that in 1868, he swapped to free trade out of pure desperation. All right, it's now 1879, and I've done it. I'm #1 producer of furniture. I'm just barely beating out China. But I have done it. But I promised something else. I promised the destruction of Swedish agriculture, didn't I? Well, if we take a look, we can see there are no farms or livestock ranches in Scandinavia. None. I have coffee plantations, cotton plantations, and such like in the colonial empire that I inherited from Denmark. But Scandinavian agriculture, we don't produce any grain at all at home. With one tiny little exception that I can't fix because of how personal unions work. We'll go take a look at grain. You can tell that I have a couple of subsistence farms, and that's just peasants who are waiting for jobs. And there are 2 rye farms in Schleswig-Holstein that I can't get rid of because they're in my customs union, and I have a personal union with them. I can't make them go away. I am instead sustaining my country via grain imports from France, Austria, and so on. I'm also using food industries to help cover my need of food. Turns out I have some pops who really want groceries. Look at that. There's actually really significant demand for groceries, and I want you to look at this tooltip for a second. I have laborers who are wealthy enough to buy groceries, even though the price could be better. I really could expand my food industries a little bit here. I have peasants buying groceries. Peasants! Those are guys working on subsistence farms. They're rich enough to buy groceries. But Ikea has destroyed Swedish agriculture in order to fuel furniture production. But like Ikea in the real world, it's not just furniture. We're selling food. Ikea doesn't grow the food. They buy the grain and the fish and the sugar to make it. But we have groceries and booze. Although I could stand to improve booze production too. Yeah, if I was going to play this game longer, I really should improve my booze production as well. A note for another game. If we take a look at what's going on in my investment pool, you're also going to notice that furniture manufactories are right up there near the top. The only thing beating them out are logging camps. And why are logging camps beating out furniture? Well, it's because, wood is in high demand. And guess who can't build any more logging camps? I can't build any more logging camps. In fact, I've had to start importing wood and hardwood in order to supply my industries. And that about wraps up our video. Ikea has dominated the furniture market and is making all kinds of money for Scandinavia. And before we wrap up here, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to watch my content. I wanted to thank those subscribers and those who put likes on my videos. You're really helping out with the channel as I'm trying to grow it. And I want to tell everyone that I'm still looking at doing streaming on certain days of the week. I am in the process of moving those, so it might be a week or two before I get another stream in place. But the next week or so, we can expect Victoria 3 to probably release a final version of what is currently the beta patch, and I'm looking forward to that. There's no telling what kind of counterfactual mischief we can get up to once the final version of the patch is released. Until then, I want to wish all of you a great day.